Join me as I sit down with Rob Biasotti, Executive Director of St. Thomas Aquinas High School, a man whose career spanned 2 decades as a teacher, coach, and administrator for one of the nation's top high schools.
And so that identity was taken away. I got in a bad car accident, broke both my legs, right? I lost my basketball scholarship at Stetson University. And I just decided to apply to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. Don't worry, I got accepted. The acceptance rate was very high back at that time. 150 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And I just coached Smith, the legendary figure who built our athletic program starting in 72, right? We had maybe 1 state championship, Chris Everett. He called me into his office, and he's a very blunt person, as Danny knows. And he just said, hey, B, you're my second choice. You're gonna get the opportunity to train the best high school team in the nation.
Rob's journey is one defined by several pivots into the unknown that has forced him to develop a unique way of looking at the world. Join us for a deep dive into leadership, historical perspective, and the power of finding meaning in the unconventional.
It's the gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. And the infinite things are the things we discussed: the power, the money, other things that once you get them, it's never enough. Never. It's infinite. And you always feel like you've lost and found them, and you're just losing and finding something. Harnessing anger, harnessing those emotions, those are really, tapping into that is so easy. It feels good, right? I can imagine what we're talking about is tapping into something that's it's much more of a practice. It's much more something we have to make a habit. Yeah. But then once you get there, it's much more beneficial for everybody around you, and you can arrive at the same spot. Yes, yeah. These documentaries, you would see that what we're experiencing is really not that much different than the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years. I think what you're going to find that's really different from my perspective, and why it's causing us so much stress now, is that right here, I can have all this. I can have world news, social media, competition, everything at my fingertips. And that, I think, is the difference. And that's what this is the problem we're going to have to solve.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Before we get started, if you could hit the like, subscribe, or follow button on whichever platform you're consuming today's show. All right, B, thanks for joining the show.
Always good seeing you, dog.
Yeah,
dude.
Just kick things off and introduce the audience to Rob Biasotti. Who is Rob Biasotti?
Well, that's a great question. I think everyone needs to, ask that question frequently to figure out at what point, at what stage of their life, like who they are, what their aspirations are, what brings them meaning. Right now, I don't want to necessarily define myself as my job, but I'm the executive director at St. Thomas Aquinas High School here in Fort Lauderdale. And I'm advancing our mission and our vision of who we are as a high school, essentially responsible for over 2,000 students and 150 faculty and staff, and trying to make sure that our students achieve the excellence based on our traditions, both spiritually, academically, from a formation sense. So that's my job, and I'm very excited about it. That's very different than who I am as a person, right? In terms of how I identify with myself, I'm very fortunate to have a loving family, a very caring wife, and 2 awesome adult children who are well on their way. My son's a paramedic and my daughter's a hairstylist. And I'm just very fortunate for the people who don't know, Danny and I have known each other for a long time. In somewhere around 2003, 2004, he was a freshman in my 9th grade world history class. I think it was world history honors. Was it honors?
I doubt it.
I don't know.
Either way, I wasn't doing too well.
And then, what I like to call, I'm not sure if I'm using the word right, synchronicity, how these certain inflection points in your life. So Danny, we not only got to be a part of each other's lives in world history class for a year, but then I had never played football, but somehow I found myself the strength and conditioning coach of the greatest football team, high school football team in the history of the universe, St. Thomas Aquinas High School football. But he was a major factor in this, and we together collaborated. Even though I was the coach, he was a leader on the team that won a state championship, and this program had been in a drought since 1999. They won it in 2007. And then he was my first participant in Endgame Adventures. It was a hike in the desert in Havasu. And then I've just enjoyed, I also know his family very well, his two brothers, JP and Mike. I coach them both, and his mom, Jean. And it's just been a pleasure of mine to be in his life and be able to experience everything he's experienced based on this foundation that we have just by accident.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of knowing. I get really, I'm happy to see Danny when he's in town, just had breakfast. So the proud is not the word to use, but honored that he went to West Point and then served the country in Afghanistan and everything he's doing. And everything he's doing now I'll talk in corporate language, in the wellness space, because we also have obviously through physical fitness and just being on a quest to find out how we can better ourselves as human beings and help other people do that. I think we both share that as meaning in our lives.
Yeah.
Probably talk too much.
100%.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, there's a lot you said there that I wanted to touch in on. I mean, obviously you touched on the physical training components of how we met relate to sports.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot there about your background and still how you approach your fitness today that I definitely want to discuss more. Certainly the training adventure piece, what you've done with Endgame Adventures.
Yeah.
The influence that's had on me personally as it relates to travel has also been huge. And I definitely want to spend some time touching on that. With everything you just shared, I mean, you kind of just highlighted a really rich history that you have connected to St. Thomas. You talked about obviously being the position you are now. Then rewind and just touching on our relationship, you could tell obviously you have a very deep roots here. Where did your journey with St. Thomas and your genesis with your relationship to the school start?
Well, I mean, you guys are see the professional side of me now. We can go Cro-Magnon side if you want. So my dad was a no nonsense person in terms of, and an innovator for his time and a risk taker and all about sports. I don't think my dad ever once mentioned anything to me about grades from K through 12. My whole deal was how many points are you going to get in a basketball game? So I think when he was deciding which school I was going to go to, and I would hate to tell anybody this now because St. Thomas is so much more than an athletic program, right? I know this on my position now. It's much more our Catholic identity, our mission, much more our academics. But at that time, at least in my family, sports is everything. So I think for me, St. Thomas gave me so much confidence athletically, and wearing the A. I can remember putting on my warm-up for basketball and going into McDonald's and being so proud of the high school. And basketball gave me the sense of confidence. Basketball was my ticket to college. And then I became a world history teacher and the opportunity to come back here. And then to be around literally what I would consider that same spirit and energy that's in the hallways of excellence, and feel like you're in a community that everyone's striving to be the best. And certainly I've had the great fortune to do that. So that's my kind of background with St. Thomas as a student, teacher, coach, dean, vice principal, and on my position as executive director. That's the foundation, being around all of these really high performing but compassionate people. And then you can have a relationship with, we go back almost 20 years now, or over 20 years, right? We can circle back. And so someone like Danny, and Danny is a unique person. Danny's unique in the sense that when I was getting my feet wet in the football space, trying to be a strength and conditioning coach, Danny was coaching me as much as I was coaching him. And my father, Danny wouldn't know this, but my father's influence on Danny, because my father traumatized me, I traumatized Danny. And so we joke about it, and it's 2026 now, right? Yeah. And so things change, and things that were once okay to talk about are not okay to talk about. Using that word like trauma would probably irritate people. But yeah, I was probably very vocal and very demanding, sometimes to a fault. I've learned that now. So that's the long answer.
I'm interested because you talked about, I think your journey from high school basketball into college, and how you took a path that I think you weren't initially expecting to, coming out of St. Thomas.
Yeah. And
it's certainly, I think, probably would be off the beaten path for most. Can you talk about where you were at in terms of high school basketball, the types of colleges you were thinking about going to,
And then what transpired to lead you down the path to Alaska?
Yeah. So like, not everything's going to work for everybody. And I'm not even saying it worked. My dad put a basketball in my hand at the age of 6. And there was like not a negotiation about what I was going to do with my life and where my identity was as a person. And so that identity was taken away. I got in a bad car accident, broke both my legs, right? I lost my basketball scholarship at Stetson University. And I was not academically inclined. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had some money from my car accident. So I applied to different faraway states. And I didn't even know the reason why I was doing that at the time. So like New Mexico, upstate New York, Alaska. And I just decided to apply to the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. Don't worry, I got accepted. The acceptance rate was very high back at that time, 150 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And I just drove there in my car. Took me 13 or 14 days, got to Alaska. And I just decided I wanted to experience something, a big shock, a lot different, because I was over with. Basketball was over with in my life. And I definitely got that shock in experiencing the frontier of Alaska, how cold it is, the culture of Alaska, the 24 hours of daylight in the summer, the 24 hours of darkness in the winter, the just unbelievable raw nature. Yeah, and I was playing basketball in a gym one day, and the coach asked me if I wanted to play for Alaska because they were a little bit lower. They were Division II. Their program was just not up and running, but they were getting started again. And I ended up playing for University of Alaska and then traveling all over the United States. Who are you going to play in Alaska? You know what I'm saying? It's like University of Alaska, Anchorage, Fairbanks. So we had to travel all over to play these teams. So that was another kind of like life hit. I keep on running into these life hits.
Yeah.
Right. So basketball here was a life hit. Then I got in a car accident, which was a negative. It became a positive with this extreme life hit with Alaska. Then I got to play basketball again. And then I probably went through a 10-year drought of not having a life hit, like in my 20s, until I came back to St. Thomas around 31 years old, 1999, and got to coach basketball again, which was my passion. Like, if you were to ask me what path I was going to go on, if you asked my wife, I was coaching basketball in North Carolina in 1995, teaching world history. I was coaching Little League basketball. I was like so passionate about basketball because that was my identity from my childhood, that became my life at St. Thomas until 2005.
Transition to football, really.
Yeah. So, I was, to supplement my income, I was personal training, right? And that was before CrossFit and Orange Theory and all this stuff. And I was in a great ecosystem to find clients, right? Kids here that were athletes that want to be personal trained. And so I was teaching and personal training, had no football experience at all. Coach Smith, the legendary figure who built our athletic program starting in 72, right? We had maybe one state championship, Chris Everett. He called me into his office, and he's a very blunt person, as Danny knows. And he just said, "Hey, B, you're my second choice. We tried to hire somebody called the jump guy but he wanted like $200 an hour. So we're going to pay you developing country wages, and you're going to get the opportunity." Can I say that? Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
You're going to get the opportunity to train the best high school team in the nation with the extra challenge. I just ran into the Pouncey brothers. They were giving a presentation with the extra challenge of this team. Lakeland had beaten us once, and they were about to beat us 3 times in a row. This is the beginning of my journey. And he just gave me his team. He just said, "Hey, here's 90 guys, or here's 60 guys," in 2005. And I can tell you that I was so driven. There was so much, it's kind of in the same position in any new position I've had. When you're the dean of a school, at least me here anyway, being the only dean, I hid in my office for a year trying to figure it out, trying to figure out being a dean. Being a teacher here and other places for the first time, very difficult. Being a vice principal your first year, it's tough. You're trying to figure it out. So then in 2005, when I was the football coach, he just said, here's my team. And I had never trained 60 guys, never played football, never had that experience, right? There was a huge learning curve until I ran into this. And I don't mean this because we're on his podcast. Until really I ran into this guy and some other people like Eterno and Datko, who's a running back on the team that year.
Jerry Harden.
Yeah. Jeremiah Harden. Yeah, Jeremiah Harden. There's, Turner. I mean, the list goes. There's a list of who's a real estate agent now in Tampa.
Gainey.
There's a list of guys, and I know I'm missing a lot of people. Tim Petty. I could go on and on. Who was the Christian Thompson was on your team? Yep. I mean, there's so many guys on that team that were the right people at the right time with the right program. And then that synchronicity introduces itself again, where I come to learn that having a team is more important than the fundamentals of strength and conditioning. That was my kind of like, that was kind of the light bulb went off in my head, like, this is interesting. And Danny was the guy who was the leader on that team, along with those other names I mentioned and didn't mention because I've forgotten. That team came together like no other. That's a very special year for me.
Yeah.
And then plus there's this movie trailer, the 300, right? That I would watch over. I'm a very like obsessive person. I watched this trailer over and over again before practice. I thought I was King Leonidas. Okay. And then just to go in there and just went crazy, right? It was a crazy year.
Yeah.
And I can say that I've only had another year. I've had great years. There's been some great teams, but I'm talking about not that every year wasn't fabulous, but when I felt nuclear, when I felt like I was glowing, when I felt like the team was glowing with radiation in a positive way, it was your year and then 2012. I'm not taking away anything from any other year. I know coaches aren't supposed to do that. I'm just talking about how I felt in terms of like, I really felt I could like make the sun go down or the moon come out if I wanted. Do you know what I mean? Like it was that, those were that kind of power.
Yeah.
Yeah. But two-way. It wasn't like my power.
Right.
It was coming back. Everything was reciprocal in this ecosystem. 70 to 90 guys in a weight room, 6 months, 2 days a week, 6 a.m. And in a different era of people who were so in love with St. Thomas football, willing to do anything and endure almost anything, right? Yeah.
Feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or just plain out of sync? I've got something that could help. It's the HeartMath Institute's Coherence Monitor. This incredible tool helps you track and improve your heart rate variability, leading to enhanced emotional balance, increased focus, and improve overall well-being. I use it daily to stay grounded and perform at my best. All it takes is just a few minutes of a guided session to start to feel the difference. Visit the link in the show notes to reclaim your calm with HeartMath.
Basketball and football are so different.
Sure.
And we've probably talked about this before, like the individuality that I think, obviously basketball is a team sport, but there is this individual nature where usually there's one or two players that the ball tends to rotate around.
Yeah.
There's just a different culture and dynamic between a basketball and football team.
Yeah.
And your basis for pretty much all your, athletic career, just you mentioned your identity was tied to basketball.
Yeah.
Like what about your experiences with basketball, with potentially your time in Alaska, did you take with you that I think helped you be successful in navigating team building? Because I think that's honestly what obviously we're doing strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
But really, we
were building a team.
We were building a team.
Yeah.
And I think that was the more important part of it. So I'm curious, like what did you pull from your basketball days or from your experiences in Alaska or your prior coaching history that was relatable or transferable?
A lot of this goes back to my dad. So my dad was pretty like, he wasn't really intense, but my dad was always for putting me in situations that I didn't belong into. Like I was always playing with older kids, or he was always dragging me to like his group of guys who were like in their 50s played basketball, like this old man basketball. And I was always the kid that no one wanted to play with. I was always transferring schools. I was always the new kid, right? And there wasn't a lot of like, I don't know, he just put me in these situations that were uncomfortable all the time, right? That I really didn't appreciate, to be honest with you. But there's one thing he didn't do. I begged this guy to play football. I begged him, right, from a very early age. And my dad in the 70s somehow knew about concussion. My dad in the 70s, my dad's 5'11". I'm 6'3.5". Maybe I was dropped off at the fire station. I don't know. But my dad also knew about like nutrition. This is a guy way before his time. My dad knew about weight training.
Yeah.
Right. It might have been knowledge machines, but he knew. So I think I approached basketball as a football player, never having played football. Right. And I was a physical basketball player. And then I always wanted to play football. I watched football. I was obsessed with football from a spectator standpoint. Had no idea about practicing the games. What I really appreciated about coaching football players in the weight room versus coaching basketball players in the weight room is basketball players in the weight room. They're not, I mean, this is back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and whatever. Yeah. They aren't all in. Matter of fact, they used to persuade you not to lift weights in the 70s and 80s. Mess up your shot. Yeah. So when I got in an environment with 70, 90 guys who were all in on, what I would call suffering, together, right? Man, that was really unique. That was unique for me. And I really enjoyed I think football is like the ultimate team sport. You got 11 guys in the field. Everyone has to be synchronous. Everyone has to be willing to endure. And not only that, a lot of non-football players like myself wouldn't know this, but playing with pain throughout the entire season. You're constantly in pain. Yeah. And so you have to sacrifice for the other people. And I think that in the weight room or in the practice fields when you're getting ready, that kind of bonding, you could take advantage of that as a coach, or you could harness that as a coach is a better word to use. And I think I was good at harnessing that. And I don't know if you remember, I was a very demanding defensive-oriented basketball coach too. Yeah. So I think that translates too. Like I would spend 80% of my practices on defense and rebounding and running
full court press and then running the crap out of us.
Really running people into the ground, if you will. That was my MO. I look back on those days now, I used to videotape everything. I'm like, delete. It doesn't translate to 2026. Yeah.
Your identity, you mentioned how much it was formed around basketball. Yeah. Obviously, you have this accident. You go to Alaska, and it wasn't about basketball initially. You just said it was like the coach found you by happenstance.
By pure. I was in the wintertime, it's 10 months of winter. I loved open gym. In Alaska, you have a couple military bases there, and plus you have the Native Americans there who are so basketball in Alaska at lunchtime. I would leave class and go play, and then I was just playing pickup basketball. That's how I got found. True story.
How were you take me through your mindset and what your feelings were like in that moment where you have this accident, you had obviously this scholarship, this future, and now you're in this literally as far away from South Florida as you could possibly be. In a whole new environment, and you're not doing the thing that you love, at least in a structured context. You're doing it more for fun. But what was your mindset at? How were you physically, emotionally? What were you feeling during those times?
It's easy for me to look back in the rearview mirror of really what happened. Obviously, it's really obvious. I mean, I'm not Carl Jung or Sigmund Freud, but it's really obvious that if you look back, whatever that's been 25, 30 years ago, I was running away from myself. Yeah. Right? Because in your mind, when the only thing you can do well is shoot a basketball, right? Even saying it, I'm not getting choked up or anything, but I knew that from my perspective as a 12 to 18-year-old person, the only value that I brought to the table was my jump shot. So imagine that's taken away. And you don't know what your value is. You go to UF for a semester and it's overwhelming. You're not academically inclined. And so you decide you're going to go to Alaska. Maybe because you want to say, I call myself Alaskan Rob. I'm trying to look so I'm looking back on it. I really enjoyed my time in Alaska. I really enjoyed pickup basketball in Alaska. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to have a second chance to play college basketball. And a dream was fulfilled. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but a dream was fulfilled. And then I had even though it was Division II, I said it like it's a bad thing. It was good basketball, but I got the chance to play at the University of Missouri in front of whatever it was at that time, 10, 20,000 people in a serious Division I college environment. So I feel really good about that. And I feel really good about that decision, even if it was my decision, even if I was trying to escape. Right. I think I was trying to escape. Yeah. Right? And I think when I came back, I didn't find myself until I came here. Through all the different...
Football coaching or through a little earlier than that?
No, when I come back to Alaska, like I said before, not only was I not academically inclined, I did get a degree in history, right? And I came back and I had a good friend from college at Stetson. And I decided I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I became a stockbroker, which I was terrible at. Okay. Failed miserably. And I went through that. I went through different financial companies. I worked for Vanguard, right? I worked for what today is Wells Fargo. And then I just realized, what am I doing? And I started teaching history and coaching basketball, which is typical, right? Social studies teacher, athletic coach in Greensboro, North Carolina. that's when I found like, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life. This is what I enjoy doing. I know basketball and I love history. And so that's when I kind of, right. And then Chief, who was the longtime basketball coach here, called me in 1998 and said, hey, we hadn't talked since 1986. And he said, hey, I have a job for you here if you want to help me coach basketball. My wife got transferred down here. I mean, this is how it happened. The internet was like 3 years old. I don't even know how this guy found me. Right. And you can see a lot of this. If you're sitting in this chair, you can see how a lot of this you'd be thinking is like destiny.
Right.
Like, look at all these things that are happening. The car accident, me playing pickup basketball in the gym, me being a history teacher and a basketball coach in North Carolina, getting a call from Chief.
Yeah.
Me deciding to go for it and coming here. Me coaching basketball, then transitioning to football. I mean, it's the transition to football where, I mean, wow, I get a lot more of that kind of like hit, right? And football's we have this program is unbelievable. Coach Smith, who's a legend, right? I'm around a lot more people. Football's resonates more in this country, more regionally, locally. I start to make a name for myself. Let's talk about that for a second. Ego, right? It's really Coach Smith who realizes that I like attention, who starts lining up interviews for USA Today, Max Preps. And I just fall into that trap. Oh, you're going to pay me some attention, right? So, and here we are.
And you were recognized as, what was it?
The strength and conditioning coach of the year in 2007 by Under Armour. Just to be clear and fair about that, no one was in the weight room like evaluating me. That's based on players like Danny and his teammates and the players throughout the years, and then being part of this program, right? But yeah, it was nice. It was nice to be recognized. I value that. I wish I had the award here. It's the most interesting bougie award that you could ever. I mean, it's like made in like royal purple or something. It's like this big. It's these like very plastic, cheesy plates. I'll have to show it to you. I'll send you a picture when we're done.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was in Indianapolis during the combine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that kind of went away.
Right.
And I was looking for something else. And that's when Endgame Adventures. I was looking. So it was like basketball, football. And I'm like wondering in my mind, what's next? Searching for what's next.
Yeah.
Which would lead into.
What were you searching for, though? Is it just the pure, hey, I want to achieve and win something? Or is there something that you were trying to fill within yourself through external? Or is there pretty just intrinsic motivation in wanting to go off and do the next thing? I struggle with that right now. I struggle with what that is. At its basest form, is it just novelty? Am I just bored? Do I just have this adult ADD, right? I mean, that would be like, is there a meaning to it? I don't know. I just know that I'm reading a outside magazine. They're talking about the 5 biggest waterfalls, I think, in the continental U.S. I've never hiked, surfed, snowboard, or snowshoed or anything like that. And I just decide that I'm going to start a venture travel company with no adventure travel experience. And we're going to hike into the desert. And Danny was part of the first group of students that went on a hike in the desert with me in Arizona and Havasu. And that set me off on another kind of like, I think it might have set both of us off on a trajectory. 100%.
And again, I'm always afraid at 58, I talk way too much. So.
But the travel adventure piece, though, like to me, and I hate to keep going back to Alaska, but Alaska seemed like you were saying, hey, I was trying to just escape myself.
Yeah.
But in some regards, that does feel like an adventure travel experience. And then I look at, this, how were those, like, how did you view that as escapism? Like, did travel adventure in this context still like feel like a little bit of escaping your current reality, or was there something else more that you were trying to build or push for? No, I think again, it's hard to really know. I think escaping a current reality is a very viable reason, or you can't discount that reason, in other words, right? Okay. I don't know. I think it feels good to score 20 points in a game. I think it feels good to, when your team in JV basketball locks in on a diamond press and you're kind of suffocating the other team and they have nowhere to go. And I like it. I really love it when
you just practice this thing. I like doing things over and over and over and over and over and over again and getting so good at them, or the team getting so good at them that when you're doing a press and you see it happening and you've repped it and the other team knows what you're going to do and the people know what you're going to do and everyone, and you still do it anyway. I really enjoy that. I enjoy that in high school that I had that feeling like, you know, I've practiced so much that no one's going to be able to stop me, even though they know it's coming. I really enjoyed being a part of the St. Thomas football team and doing it our way. And it's hard to separate the ego from the reality, right? Because like I'm dealing with the best athletes in the country. So how much of it really, I mean, could anybody have just showed up? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to have that thing in the back of your mind. Like, because I've seen that happen too. I've seen people that I thought were irreplaceable. Somebody else steps up and the operation just keeps on going, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's what I'm constantly seeking, if that makes sense. So I think that if you flex into Endgame Adventures and that first Havasu trip, the idea that I have no hiking, camping experience, that I could go into the wilderness, if you will, and do that and kind of pull it off. It's almost like I don't want to characterize it as like theft, right? All right, but it's almost like I'm gonna train the St. Thomas football team. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do dodgeball for 30 minutes. And I'm gonna go around and give seminars and tell other strength and conditioning coaches, you know what the secret to success is? Tag. A game for 5-year-olds. And they're gonna look at me like, you're not very smart. And I'm gonna look at them like, okay, watch. Or I'm gonna go do the diamond press for 80% of my practices. And I'm gonna say, watch this work. It's unconventional. So I think I get a personal feeling of that, of whatever that is. And even in this current job, right? I'm being an advancement, being an executive director, right? I'm looking at the playbook and going, do you have to follow that rule?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And I think Endgame Adventures was a way for me to go, at 40, do I have to know anything about hiking or camping and still do it and being the leader in doing it?
Yeah.
Or snowboarding or surfing or whatever else. So I don't know if that's primitive base novelty, right? Or I don't know if there's some meaning attached to it. I just know that I chuckle at that.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of like, huh. And I don't know what that is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah. I
think of you of all people, I think you should.
Yeah.
Right? You know?
Yeah. It's just funny to be part of that first trip, 2 miles down the canyon, 10 miles across. We had probably 60-pound bags filled with crap we didn't need.
We had a rolling suitcase. You were the one who had it?
My strap broke, so I had to roll the suitcase.
We were a roller in the desert. We're talking about like not necessarily sand, but rocks and sand and like this huge.
We're wearing, running shoes and
trench.
shorts.
Eternal had a shoe with a hole in it. Like, I mean.
Didn't know how to set up a tent. Had one thing of water.
Yeah. Begging for water on the way back. And that's the truth.
That is the truth. Yeah, Dak almost died.
Dak goes on a boulder at the switchbacks 2 miles up, no water and anything. I'm not proud of any of this, by the way.
Yeah, well, I was saying all this to say, look where Endgame ended up. How many trips did you do?
30 trips, 300 adults and students over that time frame. And I think it's funny that like I'm not a snowboarder, surfer, or even to this day, if someone were like, hey, check out this wave and where it's breaking at, and this is where the swell's coming in, that would be all like a foreign language to me.
Right.
Even now, after like 15 trips in Costa Rica, I get some kind of like interesting meaning out of that.
It sounds like you just like kind of explore, like basically pushing against monotony, right?
Yeah.
Exploring something new, pushing the limits, creating some discomfort through the novelty, right? And then trying to achieve mastery through it.
Yeah, I think the discomfort is like a really important part of the meaning.
Yeah.
Like how uncomfortable when you're coaching, when you're on an adventure travel, when you're practicing your jump shot. Like, and the older I get, I question this too. Like, is that really necessary? Because now I'm habituated into suffering as a component of success. When maybe it doesn't really, my wife and I will have a debate about this all the time. Like, I will tell her like, okay, I'm going through one of these periods again. I have to prepare to suffer. And it's like, maybe that doesn't have to be that way. Maybe that's in my mind, You If you approach something like it's going to be like you have to go down into the valley of the shadow of whatever, and that's your approach. Don't be surprised when you're down in the valley of the shadow of whatever.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised when sometimes you can't come out.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that approach is right or wrong. I don't know. I can't decide how lucky or unlucky I've been. I think there's been a lot of luck behind it. A lot of luck. I mean, like you just mentioned, that we had no water in the desert.
Yeah.
You guys were 18 years old. You know what I mean? Like, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Dodge that bullet, you know what I mean? And then keep on going and learn from it, right? Nikki Bosa made a comment. I'm not name dropping because it's Nikki Bosa. I'm just saying what's factual, I thought that was a really interesting comment he made in high school. I think there was one point where we were training in the weight room. By the way, he was awesome with the team in terms of being a part of the team, doing everything that was required of him as a teammate. And he looked at me and he's like, how many NFL careers have you almost wrecked? Right? With your dodgeball, with your tug of war, with your tag, right? Like, and I was like, wow, I've been very, very fortunate in that, right? Because there were those moments where people would get injured in one of those games that I thought was unifying for the team. Dodge the bullet.
Yeah.
And I think you need to do that in life too. I think the ball has to bounce for you a certain way. You could do everything right in life and things couldn't work out, or you could do everything wrong and things work out. I'm not saying I've done everything wrong. I've taken a few chances. I find it interesting, not for money. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to risk, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've taken it more for that kind of like intrinsic hit that I get from it. You know? So
obviously, like you're still super involved with the school now in a totally different context, but you've moved away from a heavy involvement on the athletic side of things.
Yeah.
Like how has that transition been from you? Because
I'm not involved in athletics, or for that matter, I do travel occasionally outside. I'm not on that treadmill of travel anymore. Oh, that's an interesting question. It's an opportunity. It's just like adventure travel if you think about it, or the way I frame it, right? How can I build this team, right, which is an advancement, and become a best practices executive director, but still look at things critically and not don't like, as a for instance, I could give you a book right now on how to shoot a jump shot, and you could read the book and it could be the perfect instructions, but it doesn't mean that you could go shoot a jump shot right now. There's the book knowledge, and there's the heuristic to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a different path or heuristic by which they do things, right? And so I'm very leery of, I do think there's fundamentals that always to the point we're making about finding meaning and not novelty, but like Frank Sinatra doing it your way, so to speak, like being stubborn in a sense, finding that heuristic that when you find it, you go, wow. And everyone else is like, I didn't think you could do it that way. And I'm like, well, you can. This is how I do. And that's what I'm hoping to do in this position now, which is different than surfing or shooting a jump shot or training a football team. Obviously, it's a lot less. I don't think you can replicate the passion of sports or adventure travel. I think it'd be very hard to do in this setting, but there is a way to do it to the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just watched images of your trip to Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
And I'm blown away by the majesty of nature. And I could put myself right there where you were through your images, because I've been on similar hikes, not that one, and just be like, just to be able to breathe that in. Yeah. And then to be around even other people experiencing it, even if they're strangers or their family or whatever, you're just experiencing that rawness of where we're meant to be, and the beauty of it is overwhelming. So I don't think you're going to get necessarily that kind of like experience in this side, but to the extent that you can make it.
Yeah.
I think when I came in here and I was interacting with the team in my office, I think you saw a little bit of Coach B in that interaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Making things, you're not going to see, like, I'm not going to come in here and start yelling at anybody, but making things light and,
Yeah.
So
I think about other people that I've seen navigate different transitions in life. And I think everything we've just talked about throughout this conversation are pretty big life transitions. Like a lot of people stay on a fixed path and they become very tied to the thing they do or what they achieve. And you seem to navigate each of these transitions very gracefully and well.
On the outside, I would, you would know what's happening inside. Inside, there's a lot of turmoil in any of these navigations. So that there's a lot of turmoil. There's a blessing and a curse. Like now that I'm 58, I understand that. I understand what you're talking about. If we did this discussion about identity 10, 20 years ago, I would have no idea what you're talking about. I'd be like, identity, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know my own identity.
Right.
Not even 10, 20 years ago. I couldn't even tell you why I went to Alaska, why I played basketball. This is all kind of like retroactive, deep thinking about, critically thinking about your life.
Do you wake up with dry mouth, or have you ever been told you snore? Did you know mouth breathing can disrupt your sleep, reduce oxygen absorption, and even contribute to snoring? It's time to optimize your breathing with Myotape from the Oxygen Advantage. This simple, comfortable tape encourages nasal breathing, leading to deeper, more restful sleep, improved energy levels, and better overall health. I've noticed a huge difference since using it myself. Visit the link in the show notes and use code GOODVIBES to get an exclusive listener discount of 5% on all products from the Oxygen Advantage. Sleep better, breathe better with Myotape.
So the benefit of this position and these transitions you're talking about is I get to become a butterfly out of the cocoon again, right? But the difficulty during the transition is the old person, the old self dying, and then waiting and pushing for the new self. Because it's a little scary to be in limbo. It was scary in 2005 and 2006, those 2 years of being a strength and conditioning coach. The amount of hiding that I did and didn't reveal myself. It was scary to be the dean of a school of this caliber for that first year. The amount of hiding, the amount of the inferiority complex, the uncertainty, right? It was scary in Havasu. Like it was really like I couldn't give you guys I wasn't giving you guys any expertise. I wasn't leading you. You know what I mean? I might have pretended to do that or whatever. I might have had a plan. We had a rolling suitcase in the desert. Do you know what I mean? Like that's that and retroactively, that's like, what? I mean, you were going to West Point. Chris is very successful. Daco was playing football at FSU. I mean, there was a lot. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
But it was something I was called to do. You know what I mean? Like, so. And again, for the real question is for what?
Right.
For what? That's the real question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I'm really proud of too is that I'm really proud of this. And we've talked about this before. There was a student in Ukraine who emailed me, right? And this will give you a sense of like my thought process and things. And I don't know if the audience is going to think I'm absolutely out of my mind, possibly. But, that day that the student emailed me from Ukraine, this is right after the Russians invaded Ukraine. I was really busy that day, super busy. I mean, I had emails stacked up. And all of a sudden this email came in. And it was almost like, this is how I took it, to show you how, like, from my mindset. The metaphor I'll use is, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. From Star Wars Episode 4. Right? I didn't even know this person. It could have been a catfishing scam. It could have been anything. But the idea that I could play a part in helping someone, a teenager from Ukraine, come here to St. Thomas in Fort Lauderdale, the ridiculousness of it all, right, was so compelling. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right. But I decided to push that to the limit. I'm very proud that the student named Anya was able to come to the United States of America, graduate from St. Thomas Aquinas High School, and further her education in America. Golly, that's like for me, that's like my trip to Alaska or my Endgame Adventures, right? Football deal. It's the same. It's the same category of just like it would be very easy for me to go, I'm Anya from Ukraine in the email. I'm sure you're aware of my story and what's happening in my country. I can't further my education. It'd be really easy for me to dismiss that. Right? And it would really be easy to dismiss it when, I don't know, I only met this person when they walked through the gates of St. Thomas.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And all the hurdles and obstacles that we had to overcome to get this person over here. So that was a classic, I'm going to Alaska for no reason type move.
Right.
That would be a great example of like, I'm like, am I searching for this stuff or is it coming to me?
Yeah. What I hear when you talk about all these things, though, there seems to be this sense you have intuitively that pulls you.
This is what I try. My wife and I drive each other crazy because I feel like I have this intuitive sense.
Yeah.
She definitely doesn't think I do. So yeah. There's it's in me.
Right.
And when I see it, man, look out. Like when I see it, I'm going. You know what I mean?
Do you think that's innate, or is there something that you do that, I don't know, creates that time and stillness for you to really listen to yourself internally or develop that confidence to just go in the direction when you get that sense, that feeling?
I flip back and forth with this, I think early on, I think my ego is completely out of control in your era.
Yeah.
Like I really feel like, I'm not kidding you when I tell you I think you would make the clouds like change, or like control gravity. Like I really felt there were times when I felt that I could actually do that. And I think when I look back on those times, I'm like, you are the most, what's wrong with you? Like really, like I'm being really self-reflective. Like what was wrong with you at that time? How could you possibly think that when you haven't determined where you were born, who your parents were, chief calls you randomly, all these random events, and you think this is you? Like, come on, right? Like that's just, as I look back on those things, I think it's preposterous almost.
But you didn't think about, like, you weren't examining the coincidence of all those occurrences and thinking of it in some grander picture. You were just kind of in the moment, just moving, almost whimsical, but I don't know, still in tune with some sense of intuition?
My intuition, and then at times obsessiveness, at times different explanations. Ego would be football for one, right? Carl Jung talks about the synchronicity, random events that have meaning.
Right.
Or you're creating the meaning and you're in tune with these events, they're lining up, right? I mean, obviously, I'm Catholic, I'm very Catholic, very spiritual. I mean, the older I get, I've always been spiritual in terms of my Catholicism and my beliefs. But the older I get, like, I'm shedding less the ego. And I think we get into, like, we're I don't know where you're at. I've been obviously following you and done your practice. Maybe letting go is better. I don't know. Because that knowing, there's a lot of damage there. You're not very present. I mean, you're present in the flow, but you're like, yeah. And it's a beautiful and terrible thing, Yeah. Can you imagine somebody with even more power? Power might be the worst drug of all, right? Can you imagine people who think they have power? Yeah. Can you imagine some of these world leaders now who are, I'm not saying what is a good war or a bad war, just or good and evil and all those things. I'm just talking about people in certain situations who are controlling events on a scale of millions of people, and what's going through their mind and how they think they're controlling events, right? And the intoxication of that possible pride, which could cause, the people who are inventing AI right now might be benefiting all of humanity and cause massive abundance. And they probably think they have their hand on the steering wheel of all of humanity. Yeah. And the people who are causing these destructive wars and causing a lot of tragic situations for people all around the world, maybe can't escape, maybe can't become self-reflective enough and escape the drug of power. I'm not saying I had the drug of power. I think I had more the addiction to flow. But again, these are all things I'm describing. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Yeah. I'm going a lot of different places, right?
Yeah. I mean, ego, I think, is problematic. And certainly, I think at high levels, we would hope that, leaders have more of an intrinsic approach to why they're doing things and think more of the greater good as opposed to self. But
yeah,
I think, false idols are abound in our society. money, power,
Yeah.
fame. These are things that people have a real affinity towards.
Yes.
I know, like, I've gone down my own path with that. I think for me, I know the thing that like can be the false idol for me was like money, right?
Yeah.
I was always very purpose driven. You know, post, obviously you mentioned going to West Point.
Yeah.
Post time in sports, you know, was in the military, very service oriented. But like once I left the military, it came all about corporate America, like, kind of like your stockbroker story. Like,
Yeah.
you just kind of fell into it. And it was like, that just seemed like the path and the next best thing to do. For me, it was just like, you know, I started chasing a corporate career, trying to earn money, but I really lost touch with like, what's this all for?
Yeah.
You know, who am I serving? Because
Yeah.
I really do think that there's something to, you know, less about yourself, more about others.
Yes.
Right? Like, I think that's a very Christian attribute, virtue. But I think there's also just a strong correlation to like overall mental health too. I think very self-absorption is a huge driver in depression and anxiety.
Yes.
And you talked about nature, travel, adventure.
Yeah.
To me, this whole travel, getting into nature is a time to reflect and like make yourself small relative to the grandness of everything.
Yeah.
And like even on this last Machu Picchu trip, I saw these porters carrying 60, 70 pounds, running by you, tearing down the campsite after you,
Right.
having everything set when you get there. And these guys do that 2 or 3 times a month, and it's not even their primary job. I mean, they live in small highland communities where they all kind of cooperate together in farming the land and using the animals, and local medicine man giving medical care. And, you know, it's very a different lifestyle. And so when I examine the happiness and motivation of this group and how excited they are to welcome people and share more about their culture,
Right.
and also the ruggedness in which they live, and compare that to the abundance of first world USA, you know, it really caused me to step back and examine, you know, my attachments. I mean, we talked earlier at breakfast about, you know, I've been obviously on this more purpose-driven, kind of getting back to the, hey, tenable vibrations, let's get some retreats going, let's help people kind of further and better define the vision and purpose of their life, define their values, think about their support systems, their health routines, incorporating things like breathwork, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, these types of practices. But I was, you know,
You're balancing.
I'm still balancing. I'm still thinking like, well, you know, I'm really losing some opportunity cost if I don't continue to pursue something, right?
Yeah. It's that balance of being in the world and outside the world.
Yes.
And you have to, you know, sometimes it's a yo-yo and sometimes you're able to walk the tightrope.
Yeah. But this particular experience in this travel with Machu Picchu and seeing these people really helped me re-examine, am I chasing for the right things? Am I really, you know, being grateful for what I have as opposed to trying to chase more wants, more consumerism, more type thing?
Well, you know, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
David Foster, there's this book called This Is Water by David Foster. Well, I'm not sure if you read it. I think it's very like, it's so, I don't know, it's such a great reflection on what reality is. And there's this quote in there that I really love. It's a gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. And the infinite things are the things we discussed, the power, the money, right? Other things that once you get them, it's never enough.
Never.
It's infinite. And you always feel like you've lost and found them and you're just losing and finding something your whole existence instead of being selfless.
Yeah.
Being selfless, which I think I've shared on the podcast that I don't know where my selfishness starts and my unselfishness ends. I'm struggling with that myself as a person, right? Like sometimes even with you, like sometimes I wonder like why we still even have a relationship. Honestly, like really, like even with my son, sometimes I wonder, like, you know, I told you about my dad, like, and my dad, like, is giant, like, in terms of my dad's my hero. But wow, man, this guy put me in the crucible at a very young age, and then I in turn put other people in a crucible. I can remember having harsh words with you for not doing your homework, you know, like, you know what I mean? Or in basketball practice, making you run until your lungs popped out of your body, or like having you demanding two opposite things from you in the weight room, do what I say, but rebel against me too, but be a leader, but don't be a leader, but do this, but this doesn't make any sense. But it doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense. But do this. Then we go on this hike, you know what I mean? And I'm just fortunate that you and people like you you've obviously been reflective and been able to see that either I was a flawed human being or, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever that was, right? So you guys, and that's what kills me. You guys don't look back at that. You guys don't look at that but when I look back now, when I look back, like if I had a do-over, I would certainly do things over. I would do things differently. I don't think I needed to be that savage. I think I could have got my point across in another way. I don't think, like to your point too, of like holding on to something. Like once I see something, I hold on to it so tight that it is somewhat damaging. Right? It can be damaging if I'm going to hold on to hey, we're going to practice the diamond press for 80% of our practice. And probably somewhat damaging. You know, like there's rebounding, there's dribbling, there's offense, there's side outs, there's free throw, there's stuff like that, right? I tend to like get in those days when I was younger and less and more like this. And then I wonder like, why was I focusing that intensity in that direction? Yeah. So there's a lot of different things I've touched on. Our relationship. My dad has this phrase, getting back to my dad, that always stuck with me. My father was an orphan. I think it's a big part of my story because he had to learn how to survive in an orphanage for 6 years. And he never really talked about it. Matter of fact, the way he talks about it was the best part of his life. It was so like kind of a paradox, right? How could that be the best part of your life? But that's where he learned like how to survive and really thrive in that environment.
Working hard but not seeing the muscle growth you want, taking collagen or protein might not be enough. You could be missing essential building blocks. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Body Health's Perfect Amino tablets. These tablets provide all 8 essential amino acids in the perfect ratio for optimal muscle protein synthesis, recovery, and overall health. They're a game changer for anyone looking to build lean muscle mass, boost energy, and support healthy aging. Fuel your body with the best. Visit the Body Health link in the show notes and use code NEW20 for a 20% discount on your first order. Unlock your potential with Body Health.
You're talking about your dad and the orphanage.
Yeah, I think, as I get reflective on it, I think that his experiences surviving and thriving in that environment and not having any direction at all, that coming out of that environment, at 16 or 17 years old, and being on his own at 18, right? And having kids young at 18 or 19, and then deciding that, I've seen this story before in other people I've met too, like people have very, very stressful beginnings lead to very unique workarounds in life. And so I was able to watch him in his unique workarounds and be the beneficiary and the guinea pig for these unique workarounds. So obviously I didn't take he had this thing where he would say this, that he could bend reality, like he could take any situation and make it a good situation. And his phrase was bend reality. And see, I've never forgotten that. And I didn't start using or thinking about that phrase until like very recently, within the 5-7 year period of like, that's where I must have got that from. I had a conversation with my son the other night, and he's a paramedic in Connecticut, working 2 jobs. And he did something, and I was like, that's a Biasotti move. And he goes, well, I can't help myself. I'm like, I know you're not going to be able to, because it just got kind of passed down. Like, I joke around, my dad traumatized me. I say that in a loving way. My dad traumatized me, I traumatized you, to a lesser extent. And then, or I could say my dad found a unique workaround. I learned his unique workaround. My son learned this unique workaround or took that heuristic. So he had the phrase bend reality was a part, continues to be a part of his vernacular. His house gets wiped up by a hurricane. You think the most people at the end of the world? Stop. It's time. It's a new beginning. Something happens business-wise, he just changes the equation and makes it a positive. Yeah, and not from a hokey positive psychology standpoint. No, from like, okay, I'm in a World War II prison camp. How do I escape? And if I can't dig a tunnel, I'm going to cut through the fence. So I can't cut through the fence, I'm going to disable the spotlight. Like that kind of like consistent pattern of getting out of the prison camp. Whatever prison camp that he was in as a metaphor. Yeah. So definitely I got that. sometimes I get irritated that I'm not using it in the ways that he used it. I think that might be a little Freudian too. Like I saw him be very successful business-wise with it. I haven't had his level of business success, right? Or independence, if that's a marker of success.
Right.
So
That's interesting.
right?
Yeah.
And again, it's just, these are all just theories too, you know? I mean, this is just me reflecting on all those different pivots in life and where does that come from?
Yeah. I know I'm excited to create a space for the retreat. I know you're coming to Costa Rica.
Can't wait. That's one thing I'm really, your breath practice, I'm sorry, you didn't finish.
No, go ahead.
You know, you talk about like searching for different experiences that can be like multipliers of things, right? So, you know, gamification, press and basketball, trying to be the best storyteller you can with teacher, trying to have presence in the game. Well, you know, you and I have both been in the fitness field together where it was high stakes at that time, high school football. And then always working out and being healthy, right? Both mentally and physically. And, you know, and candidly, I haven't routine what you taught me. But in the time that we spent with the breath practice, the holotropic breathing was so impactful for me. And then finding out that I was doing breathing possibly inaccurate with the Wim Hof and learning that was oxygen deficit that really led to more oxygen uptake and more calmness in your body and your brain. Those things that you did, I'm really looking forward to that trip to Costa Rica to dive even deeper and to re-explore those benefits.
Yeah. I think a lot of the things we're putting together are really just a curation of a ton of things that I've gathered from, you know, different doctors, authors, different retreats and things that I participated in during, you know, my transition from that corporate work to kind of where I'm at now.
Right.
And thinking through what is the broader purpose or directionally, what is the way I'm trying to go. And
right.
That doesn't mean the path's always clear, that
right.
you don't have to take a right or a left, or that you get off the path or this is that, but you have somewhere fundamentally you could kind of benchmark your decisions against.
Yeah.
And kind of go back to and at least gain awareness to what are potentially the false idols that could pull me away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm excited for a lot of things because there's these great exercises to allow people to get reflective on those things and prompts to help people kind of cultivate some clarity on those items. There's going to be some great information on developing better health routines.
Yeah.
But then it's also the experiences of the breath work, of the yoga, of the guided meditation, where you'll really create opportunities to get a little bit more still, to maybe listen to that inner voice, cultivate a little better intuition.
Yeah.
And so I think from end to end, it'd be a great experience. I think there's going to be a wide variety of people from kind of approaching retirement years to post-retirement to, you know, middle age, navigating career transitions, you know, singles, couples. So kind of a wide cross section of people. But I think for anyone that's, you know, in a transition state, maybe looking for a little relaxation or reset, or potentially just looking to reboot some health protocols, I think it's going to deliver a pretty transformative experience in one of those regards. So I'm excited for your participation in that. But,
you know, what you did in that program that you gave me too, just so you know, like, we talked about the intuitive thing, the pivots, like the obsession, the locking on the things. I think as I get older, what your program did for me was it brings a level of clarity and calmness and not being so, you know, focused in the rearview mirror or latching on to like having the past consume you or not being so worried about the future consuming you. Again, fine line between that harnessing that and that being detrimental. But that your breath program, even the high altitude training did for me, right? Through the holotropic, the high altitude, and the I don't know what it's called. It's where the light breathing. Yeah, right. God, in those brief moments, you're able to kind of like what I would call is clarity and perspective, right? On just who you are, like where you can maybe understand. I think you could understand those intuitive pivots instead of latching onto them.
Yeah.
Like, like a horse on fire and a barn galloping out. Like, I mean,
Yes.
so
Creating more ease.
creating more ease. And again, I don't know I think that's really super healthy. I don't know if you're going to, again, these are just questions. I don't know. Listen, that's the optimal state. No question about it. And that might be like the optimal state for anything. Like I said before, maybe I had this wrong. Some of these things. If I go back in time, it's like the dark side and the light side of Star Wars, right? The dark side is really easy. Harnessing anger, harnessing those emotions, those are really, tapping into that is so easy. It feels good, right? I can imagine what we're talking about is tapping into something that's much more, it's a much more of a practice. It's much more something you have to make a habit.
Yeah.
But then once you get there, it's much more beneficial for everybody around you, and you can arrive at the same spot.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
See where I'm going with this?
Yes. The reactivity piece. It's like,
Yeah.
And yeah, I used to be bad at this too. It's like the emotions, the anger, you can let that drive you, and you can kind of will your way to success, but at a cost.
For you and everybody else.
For you and everyone else around you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that when you lose that reactivity to that emotion, or that you let go, that you're
not going to get there.
Listless or lazy, or that you don't care, that you just do nothing.
Yeah.
It means that the things that are driving you need to come from a different place, and not from a reactivity of like letting the emotion drive the train. It's bringing the things back to the cognitive centers of the brain and acting with thought and intention.
Yes.
As opposed to off the rail.
I can tell you in this position now, like in those other roles that I had, especially in the athletic world, I really felt like the off the rails worked.
Yeah.
But I'm questioning it now. I can tell you in this position, and I'm not comparing executive director to JV basketball, whatever, false equivalency, right? But what I am saying is that that's not going to serve me. I can't come in here and make someone get on the line with a line touch if we don't execute in marketing or finance or operations of St. Thomas. I think that in certain roles, maybe in every role, that what you're offering people, especially in leadership roles of large organizations, that they're going to want that clarity, that perspective, that presentness, because the temptation to go to the dark side, or emotion, anger, power hungry, money driven, holding people accountable not for them, for their benefit, but for your own personal benefit, which is ultimately destructive. It may work in the short term, but ultimately you're going to cause a trail of wreckage behind you. I think that's why I think your program can be benefit for everybody at every point in life, but especially for someone like myself and who's in a leadership position of a Catholic organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised to hear you look back and say that you wish at times you had done things different. I think, you were going through your own journey, and you're clearly at a place now that's much different.
Yeah.
But you had to go through those experiences to then now arrive to where you're at now. I also think there's a ton of people you influence, and me in particular. I think about our time together. I mean, the amount of influence you had on me from an athletic standpoint, on strength and conditioning, on being able to, have some level of success at football, to what you did for our team collectively and building that unit, to also leading to inspirations for me, helping cultivate my interest in travel, adventure, the influences that you set through Endgame Adventures. I think a lot of those things also correlated to things that I brought with me into the military too.
Yeah. I'm really proud of those things.
Yeah.
I am so proud of that and being a part of that. I just see it through a different lens now. Maybe it's just age and self-reflection. And, especially as it pertains, to my family too, like, and ego. I didn't, on some of these pivots, there's a little bit of selfishness that goes along with that too. That you might not realize. It's just what we talked about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're going down this road of maybe it was really fun to be with you guys and maybe like take some other things that I should have been paying attention to and go, I'm just going to focus on football right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. I don't know. Again, those are things that all individuals have to weigh for themselves and reflect on their life when they're in the moment before they go down a road. I've just become more reflective about those things. Yeah. I don't even know if I could change it, more would. I'm just saying there's a reflection that takes place there. Like, why did I go to Alaska? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why did I start Endgame Adventures? Right? Like, why did I? What was the real reason? I thought there was a reason, right? But what's the real reason as I look back?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And wouldn't it be nice to know the real reason before you?
Yeah.
You know?
What is really driving your wants and desires, your actions?
I don't even know if I want you to share this, but like, you could really go down the rabbit hole and go, man, was getting that Ukrainian student out of Ukraine for them or for me? Yeah. Like, who was it for? Was it just was it a cool story I can tell somebody one day? You know what I mean? Like, was a lot, you know what I mean? Like, where is that? Especially if you don't know why you're doing it at the time. This is getting very philosophical, but I'm just trying to, it's not like I haven't thought about these things. Right. You know, post event, you know. And I think the real danger is if you don't think about it. Just imagine if you're trapped and you haven't thought about it and you're not acknowledging all the people that helped you and all the circumstances and God that put you in this position. Yeah. And you really do think it was you. Well, man, you're in a recipe for being really disappointed for the rest of your life. Yeah. That's the danger I think you'd be in. And I've actually met people who I perceive anyway, who are in that thought trap. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think this conversation around ego, I'm also thinking about in the context of world leaders. I think there's a lot of tension right now and angst in the society for geopolitical reasons, for AI, for rises in mental health issues, which might be associated with both those things. You've mentioned your affinity for history. I've really enjoyed your world history class. Yeah. Despite my grades not reflecting it or my level of effort.
I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I don't recall this guy being West Point material. I don't. He's officer in the Army. He's a tech company.
You're not the only teacher who told me that. Well, Mr. Schneck also told me.
Yeah. So I'm just like, we have these conversations all the time. And that's not I'm not doing you a disservice. It was my lack of recognition of all the abilities that you had at those certain times. You just being like a grunt looking at things. But you're going to ask me a question about history or politics?
Well, yeah, I know you're a generally optimistic person and you have a very strong history background.
Yeah.
And so what would your message be to someone who's maybe feeling a little angst around current events with Iran or, worldwide in terms of taking a historical perspective on what could be potentially something to maybe ease people's concerns, not just with, geopolitical conflict, but also just generally with technology advancements and AI and all that?
I think the thing that any person can do to put themselves at ease with, and I'm not saying anybody needs to be at ease in the modern world. The modern world is very chaotic, uneven, uncertain. There's black swans that are appearing almost every week in politics, energy, AI, whatever. So I'm not saying there's not a need for anybody to not have a certain level of stress and anxiety. There certainly is. But if you were to go back and watch, I think Ken Burns' documentary, the famous person's documentaries on Civil War or the Roosevelts, or you were to, there's some certain, I forget what streaming platform it's on, where they examine every decade in America. There was just a great Ken Burns documentary on the Revolutionary War. And you would find, let's just talk about the Revolutionary War for just a second. You're going to find three types of Americans during the war with independence with Great Britain. You're going to find the Tories, the loyalists. You're going to find the 40% in the middle, and you're going to find the 30% that wanted their independence. And all of these while we're fighting a war with England, all these factions are fighting with each other, flipping teams, right? You're going to find that in that war, for instance, both the patriots, the loyalists, and the English army were plundering the countryside. Like everyone was plundering each other. You're going to find the hypocrisy the beauty and the hypocrisy of the Declaration of Independence, where all men were created equal, but yet women can't vote. And obviously, you had what was essentially a slave economy in the Americas. You're going to find massive, if you get into the 20s, you're going to find massive changes in technology, in railways, in radio. You know, women didn't get the right to vote until 1820. You're going to find in the Gilded Age that this massive inequality. You're going to find children working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day in these factories, right? So this, what we're experiencing, I think if you were to watch some of these documentaries, you would see that what we're experiencing is really not that much different than the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years. I think what you're going to find that's really different from my perspective and why it's causing us so much stress now is that right here, I can have all this. I can have world news, social media, competition, everything at my fingertips. And that, I think, is the difference. And that's what we're this is the problem we're going to have to solve. This is the beauty and the problem of AI, of technology. It's all right now. Boom, 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 boom. I know during World War II, for instance, when somebody did the research on this for me, they didn't show a dead American body. Think about this. World War II, 50 million dead, 600,000 Americans dead. Right? It's the most carnage in human history to date. They didn't show the bodies of dead Americans until like 18 months, 2 years into the war. And the bodies they did show were 2 or 3 dead Americans washed up on a beach because the cameras weren't, the press wasn't showing that, and the people back home weren't getting that. You had a president that won 4 terms that suffered from polio and was in a wheelchair. And no one, the public didn't know the extent of, they thought he had beaten polio.
Yeah.
And he had to show that he had beaten polio to get elected because at that time, someone in his condition was unelectable. Right? So just think about that for a second. You know, it's just an amazing period of time, an amazing period of stress, challenge that Americans had to go through to overcome. And we're in another period that I'm optimistic about. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos. I think there's going to be a lot of like spasms. But I think out of the chaos will be this order that's created, hoping could take 3 years, could take 15 or 20 years. Yeah. But I would watch documentaries on history. And I think if you were to do that, it would be an eye opener for you. That's why I think history is very important. It's an eye opener to listen, there was a civil rights struggle. You know, the people, African Americans got their civil rights in 1965. That's not that long ago. That's, you know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, there's a bunch of different things that this country has been through. Yeah, it's fine. I'm optimistic.
I appreciate having joining the show.
Every time you come into town, I'm like, this is great. Someone who actually knows me. Yeah, I can't wait for the retreat.
Yeah, I'm excited for Costa Rica.
Yeah, my wife's super psyched about it too.
Yeah,
my wife's a yoga teacher.
Yeah, Rob's wife's gonna be teaching the yoga.
Yeah,
and so it's gonna be a great weekend.
And can I just finish this? I decided December 26th to do a detox of social media because at 58 years old, Danny and I were talking about it. We were just talking about things you can get addicted to. Social media has certainly been a curse for me. I'm over here picking the music, using AI to pick the music, going in the filters, looking at my views, how many likes did I get, right? And I decided that it was just all just in the wind. Why am I doing it, right? But I'm going to go back, put a link to Instagram, so at least I can post this. I think this is a great interview. So maybe that's my ego. I don't know.
Well, I said it earlier, and I think there's even more. You shared a lot about our history just through the conversation.
Yeah.
There's more people that we didn't talk about too, and you're help throughout navigating potential enlisting versus going to West Point. And like I said earlier, I mean, I couldn't be more appreciative for everything that you've helped me in terms of getting to West Point, propelling me on path in athletics, in fitness, and travel. You've been extremely influential, and I'm greatly appreciative for our relationship and same relationship.
I am too.
And I know there's a lot of students that could say very similar things too. So,
does Jean watch your podcast?
She does. She's one of 7 people.
This is a message for Gene. So I was telling Dan I was doing some decluttering, and I have like 5 or 6 letters from parents or students, and I still have your letter, Gene, that you wrote to me after we took Danny down to the Marine Corps.
I didn't know about it.
Your mom wrote me a letter.
Yeah,
it's one of the nicest letters. Like, thank you so much for like guiding this. I don't even know what I was thinking that day. Like, can you imagine? Like, I could never do that today. Yeah. Like, I got in my. I don't know if I drive you down there. Yeah. I drove. A senior down to the Marine Corps station because he wanted to enlist. Yeah. And my whole idea was to trick him not into enlisting the whole way and asking all the right questions. So yeah, so that was great. That was my great honor to do that. I value that letter, Jing. I really did.
I didn't know about that until you told me.
Yeah, that's I had it. Everything I went through, I'm keeping like these 5 letters. Yeah. Gene's letter is one of them. It's very nice cursive. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Pete. Yeah. Okay, all right, dog. Yeah. All right, dog. Always a pleasure.